please.
Sharon,
Here.
David Anderson,
Here.
Bill,
Not yet.
Janet,
Here.
Kyle,
Yes, ma'am.
David Dellendorf,
Present.
Paul, I believe was going to be absent. Jane, Patty,
Here.
Tony,
Present.
Dick,
Here.
Liz,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
here comes Jane, Kevin,
Aki.
Olivia,
Aquí.
Here.
Maureen,
Here.
Anne Marie,
Here.
and Tom.
Here. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so going into the minutes. Does anybody have any issues, changes, questions regarding the minutes? If not, I would take a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
So move.
All right,
Second.
got Patty and Tom Star as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay, great. The minutes pass. We are going straight into Jamie, 6 minutes ahead of schedule, but I have a couple different things I want to raise. I would like to make a couple changes to the agenda, unless there's objections. One is item number 6 regarding Charter section 8.2 on personal systems. There was a discussion back and forth on this matter. This was a personnel systems matter. And the question came up that there's a personnel manual that all county employees are required to follow and read when they're hired and so on. And the elected officials in the county are not part of that. They are not mandated to follow that. And I don't think that that was ever done deliberately necessarily. But the suggestion has come up that I made in back and forth with our attorney and some others that everybody in the county should be under the same guidelines, and those guidelines should address justice and equity and all sorts of really important issues, but that every county official, be they elected or appointed or hired, needs to be under the same policy. But I'm going to scrap that from our agenda for this full CRC and bump that to the operations committee so that we save time on our agenda today. So there will not be discussion for the full CRC. If you have issues with that, I'd like you to contact the leads for that committee. And so if there's any objections, I'd like to make that. If there's not any objections, I'd like to make that change. The other thing is that we are going to go into executive session with Amy at the end of our meeting today for a discussion with our prosecuting attorney's office on some matters regarding the Public Open Meetings Act. Not a big deal, but we just have to have a discussion. And so what we're going to do is do that at the very end of the meeting so that visitors can have public comment and participate in the full meeting and not miss any of the meeting. And then we will ask everybody except for commissioners to step off the call, and we will have that conversation with Amy. Is that okay with folks? Any concerns on that? Okay, wonderful. With that, Jamie, we're still starting 4 minutes early. I feel great about that. Jamie Stevens is our senior member on the county council, and that is not according to age. That is according to time and commitment to this county. And I want to start, Jamie, by thanking you for your service and your years of commitment to the county. I think you've just done an incredible job, not just representing your district, but the county at the state level and frankly at the federal level too. And it's just great to have you here. So thank you for taking the time to be here. And we're really interested in hearing from you what the job's like. We have 2 other council members we're going to hear from, one today. And their perspective will be fascinating because they're brand new, but you have years on the job. And so your perspective is really important to us. And so we'll turn it over to you to talk about the position. And then I'm sure we will have a number of questions for you toward the end. So thank you again for being here, Jamie.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. And I would not, you left that very politely open, but I am the longest and oldest on the council. Fortunate to have two much younger council members joining me. And what I've prepared for today is I want to keep it as brief as possible because I figure you have more questions. I started trying to put some thought. I did put thoughts down, and it was just way too long and boring. So I'm going to try to bring up what I do is in the job, and then open it up for questions if that's okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's great.
Okay, so this is my 11th year on the council. And today I should remind you that I am a council member, but I'm not speaking for the council. I have unique experience with the charter. I've run for office under the previous system of election by district and served with 6 members. And I've also been elected countywide, serving with the 3-member council. I believe the countywide 3-member board is working well. Being elected countywide forces each candidate or council member to understand the issues on every island, not just their home base, and forces us to get out and around the county. Our duties are both administrative and legislative, meaning we are responsible for policy as well as day-to-day operations of the county, including setting priorities of the non-elected departments. On the ground, this is mainly accomplished through the county manager position. The council is also responsible for passing the budget. Obviously, this past year was dominated mainly by COVID response and trying to balance the budget while keeping our services and operations moving forward. When not in council meetings, each council member works with staff on timely projects, answers emails, and addresses citizens' concerns. Further, our responsibilities include being liaisons with our 37 advisory committees, as well as being members of the Board of Health and members of several regional organizations that support or fund services in the county, from habitat restoration to senior programs to mental health services. Currently, in addition to some of the other organizations I serve on, I'm the chair of the Puget Sound Ecosystem Coordinating Board, chair of the Northwest Regional Council, which deals mainly with our senior services, and an officer of the Washington State Association of Counties. What I believe should be looked at as part of your deliberations is moving the budget preparation to the council. Mainly because we're responsible for the passing of the budget and the employee count, and it would make sense to have us prepare the budget. I'd also like to, and I know you're already working on several committees, so this is coming in probably an hour late and $1 short, but eliminating the line elected offices and creating a financial department. Currently, we're very fortunate in the qualifications of the auditor, assessor, and treasurer, but that isn't necessarily the case going forward. And lastly, only because I've been closely involved with this, and Commissioner Lafferty understands this, is to help clarify the initiative and referendum process. The initiative process has produced much angst among those that have been proposed, and not just as being a divisive issue, as trying to just get the initiative onto the ballot. And I think there could be a couple of maybe checklists, or I think that's the best way to say it, that both the auditor and the prosecuting attorney should maybe go over before people go out and spend the time and effort for something that is that they're very passionate about. And I'm going to end there.
Wow. Jamie, you're a wonderful person.
Why, for ending there?
Yeah, I was worried about our agenda today. I may start putting stuff back on it. Any questions for Councilmember Stevens? Yeah, Tony, and then David Dellendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jamie, good to see you. Thank you for being here. We've known you for a long time, and we're glad that you're on the board or on the council. One of the questions that we have in one of our committees is we're dealing with is the relationship between the council and the county manager. How do you see that process working since you've created a resolution about 7 years ago that details some of the work that the county manager has to deal with? How is that whole project working with the county manager? Not particularly the person, but the office of the county manager.
Well, let me back up here so I just don't blather for a second. The office of the county manager is working very well as it is. I look at it as originally, and I'm going to kind of compare apples to oranges, but the previous county manager was not as effective, nor do I feel like, I don't feel like the people really had an input on it. And I'm not saying we need an elected county manager. I'm just saying he was pretty well insulated by having 3 people up for election every 2 years. And this county manager is not well insulated. But we believe that in putting together that contract and those duties, that everyone would understand what he's responsible for and what he's not responsible for. And I've found it a lot more effective in getting things done. And like you said, not this county manager, but any county manager way back when, it also seemed to me and I tried to look it up and I don't have any backup, but part of the original charter review committee felt like the finances and the amount of paperwork and grants, et cetera, and liability. When they first even thought of having a county administrator, county manager, was to be able to hire a professional manager. I'm not saying we don't have it in the county, but we, both on an interim basis and when we hired Mike, we didn't have anybody in the county apply. So, and I think that's an important part is the qualifications.
Thank you.
That answer your question, Tony?
Yeah, thank you.
David Dillendorf, and then Bob, and then Anne Marie.
Jamie, good to see you. Thanks for coming. What I'm going to ask is not a reflection of where I stand or my subcommittees stand on the issue of the number of county council members. It's just a general question. When the change was made several years ago to change from 5 to 3, I was concerned that under the Open Meetings Act, that individual county council members were not going to be able to consult between public meetings with their other council members. They were hamstrung. They couldn't talk to anybody and exchange ideas as they could when we had 5 on the county council. Could you tell me if that's been a hindrance?
Yeah.
Or 6? Could you tell me if that has been a hindrance to you over the last 10 years in not being able to talk to any of your fellow county council members outside of the public meetings, the weekly or bi-weekly meetings?
No, because even in those first 2 years with working with 6, we ended up somewhere in the middle getting a ruling that if we met with 3 people, even if we met with 3 people, which was less than a quorum, that essentially it was a quorum. So we could talk with another council member about something, but since you're in kind of a little teeny world, it's kind of nice, but I haven't found it to be as much of a hindrance as I thought it might be, David. And I will say I was a little concerned about that, but on the other hand, we've moved a lot more efficiently with 3. All combinations of 3.
Okay, thank you.
Bob O'Connell.
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I've got 2 questions of
Yeah,
Jamie.
go ahead.
All right. First of all, Jamie Lopez loves you. You know that. Okay. The 2 questions. The first is moving the budget to council. What is the role now of council in coming up with the final budget, don't you have to adopt it? And don't you have the opportunity to amend it and that kind of stuff? And how does that fit into your notion that the whole budget prep process needs to be moved to council? My second question is, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying about the assessor and the auditor, et cetera. Were you saying that those offices should be combined? And if so, if that's what you're saying, could you talk a little more to us about that?
So on the budget, we begin in July, the council, first of all, kind of sets a direction. Last year it was, we have to lose people. But we start in July, and then we get a first iteration somewhere in late September, October that the auditor puts together. And then from then on, we're continually meeting and honing down on people's asks, requests for people or money, and kind of just start the honing down process. And we generally somewhere in November get down to a part where you're going to have to make really hard and decisions. At that point, or I mean, somewhere in October, November, the council's in charge. Once it's presented to us, we're basically in charge of it. But since the auditor prepares it to begin with, everything's on her system. And so we go down until we get into December and pass the budget.
So is it a matter of the system that you're on that it would be more convenient if?
Just a matter of, because the auditor prepares the budget, the auditor is actually making a lot of decisions about the budget before the budget ever gets to us. And my thinking is, if we're supposed to be responsible for the budget, then we should be responsible for it, not a pre-edited version.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead. And as far as the what we call them, the line offices, but we're fortunate. We have an auditor who is a CPA, but there's nothing that says an auditor has to be a CPA. We have an assessor who happens to be a really good land use attorney before he ever got to us. But there's nothing that says that he has to know anything about property law or taxes. And some places don't have those positions elected. They're not mandatory. They have a financial office of financial management where those functions fall under them. Kind of like the idea of the county manager being a professional manager.
So are you saying, Jamie, that those people should all be appointed, or that they all should be under one office of financial management, and that person should be appointed or elected?
Bob, I think it could go either way, but I think it would be, if you had a person who was overseeing that office, that they could be appointed. Even if you didn't have that, but those other positions could be appointed.
Thank you.
Anne Marie.
Yes, Jamie, I have two questions also, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The first one, following up on Bob's inquiry, if the council has the budget, does that mean that the manager would actually be preparing the budget for the county or for the council?
It would be the manager with the council.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to see if that's the house you would have it in. Then my next question has to do with the relationship of the Charter Commission and the San Juan County Council. And it was my understanding that the commission is getting public input on ideas, ways to strengthen the structure of the county government. And that after we finish, the council then receives our recommendations and you hold a public hearing on how you want to go forward. Is that the process?
I should have double checked my charter before I got here, but I didn't believe we could make any changes to it on how we go forward.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting that you make changes. I was suggesting that you have a public hearing about your perspective on it.
Yes, we do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And that was it, Anne Marie?
Yeah.
Okay. Maureen C.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
Morning.
I'm confused by what you said about the line offices. I can't quite figure out if you're saying to combine all three and have one head. I just don't understand what you were saying. And the other one is I want to know, the other question I have, if you don't mind, is the council job a full-time job? I mean, are all of you working full-time, and have you all been working full-time over the last year since we brought it back to 3? So if you could just kind of give me some information on that first part, line offices. I don't follow you.
It's the assessor, the treasurer, and the auditor. Those
Right.
services that are provided, those are services. And you need a manager there. So my personal thing would be to combine them and have one manager, an appointed manager.
I see.
However, I'm not going to discount the thought of just having 3 departments with 3 department heads. But I personally, and what I've seen in other places is basically the services are there, but they're under one combined manager. Or, yeah.
Okay, I get it. That's clear. Thank you.
And yes, I do work full time.
I thought you did.
When you were our clerk, Maureen, I think you saw also, even with 6, I think as Tom Cowan, a former county commissioner, once described, and Kevin, you know this, legislators, he goes, the good ones are working full time. It's a part-time position, but the good ones are working full time.
True.
We've gone to 3 and taken a much greater interest in our advisory committees. That wasn't happening under 6, but under 3 it is happening. And so yes, it depends. And you're still working on Saturday at the grocery store.
I hear you. Okay.
This morning I was up on a call. I was on an Association of Counties national call with the president and Speaker of the House. I was doing Meals on Wheels, came back and had caught up on some phone calls, and now this. So, and we do a lot. There's a lot you just don't see of working with staff. That's why I put it in there. Or reading, the amount of material that's going into the comp plan.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Jamie.
And Kyle will know the Board of Health has also been a little bit more work this year.
Just a little bit. Thank you.
Tom Starr.
Jamie, welcome. It's great to see you.
Hey, Tom.
Recently, I was telling my colleagues here about back in the day when I was county commissioner, and we were purposely given, I think it was, I recall, 7 or 8 departments in the county to be liaison with them. And we met with them weekly and brought their issues to the board. And now the charter sort of like specifically prohibits that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering what the fine line is on you talking to the troops and the department heads and getting out to see what's really going on. Could you enlighten us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'd like to clarify something. The charter, as the current revision, does not, it doesn't keep us from doing any of that. It even says we may appoint a county manager or may not. It's at our choice. And we chose to go ahead and go that route. So as a little bit different than the way you were doing it, where you were kind of not just liaison, but almost directly managing for the council or for the commission at the time. We still deal with all the department heads. If I need information, I'm not going to be doing their evaluation. I mean, I'll have input on their evaluation, for instance, like public works or community development and planning. But I was on a call before this meeting with Erica Shook going over natural resource lands and how they're approaching it. And they're going to set up a meeting with each one of us.
Mhm. Thank you very much for that.
Dick Grout.
Hey, Jamie. I want to go back to the budget for a minute. When we met with Mike, he indicated, I thought pretty clearly that when he and the auditor put the preliminary budget together, that's a collaborative process. What you were describing sounds like it's really the auditor preparing the budget. So I'm unclear.
Well, I guess I'd kind of refer back to what Tom's, the way Tom's question was, what's that fine line? It can be collaborative, but according to the charter, it doesn't have to be collaborative. Under the current charter, it says the auditor will prepare the budget. So yes, we have been collaborating, but it's not in the charter that way.
Thank
Tony,
you.
a second, I'm gonna go to Kyle. I think, Tony, you went earlier, so just let me get a few others. So we'll go to Kyle next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Jamie. Slightly different flavored question. I want to recognize all of the, you just sort of alluded to some of it, recognize all of the travel and the time that you spend in the region representing the county. And I know a lot of that is out of your own priority, Olympia and otherwise. I have a question about sort of transboundary focus. Can you think of anyone, or I guess I would start by asking, do you see any value in this group hearing from anyone else outside of the county, specifically across the border on some of our topics, some of our subcommittee topics? And if so, now or in the next few days, would you be willing to kind of point out who some of those people are?
I'll have to think about it, Kyle. I'm not sure if there is anybody. Mainly, like, we have a relationship with the Islands Trust Council, which is a Gulf Islands council that deals mainly with land use planning.
I'm thinking of them and the Georgia Strait Alliance and the Northwest Straits Commission, those folks like that.
Yeah, but anyway, with the Islands Trust, when you were saying across the border, after they came and toured, they didn't understand our way of governing. So they were like taking issue with the way we govern versus the way they govern. Whatever works for everybody, but as far as the good thing about charter is it's a home rule charter. So if you want to have somebody from the Northwest Straits, have at her. I'm not sure what. I guess I'm not sure what the value added you're looking for, Kyle, and might help me think of a suggestion.
Okay, I'll connect with you offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Dave Anderson and Jane Fuller. Is there anybody else who hasn't gone yet who wants to speak? Okay, so we'll go to Dave Anderson and then Jane and then Tony and then David Dillendorf. You're muted, David.
Thank you. Here we go. Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us today. I have a question about oversight. What is the nature of oversight? Is it an ongoing for the county manager? Is it an ongoing process? Is there an actual review, and is that review public? And is that review done collaboratively with the rest of the council, or is that just done by the chair? Thanks.
There is oversight. There is a review. It's the chair ends up preparing it, but it's done collaboratively with the rest of the council. The way we have been doing it is having some goals for the following year, or for each year, and then that's the basis of the review and what needs to be improved on. And no, we don't make it public.
Thank you.
Jane Fuller.
Hi, Jamie. Welcome and thank you for being with us today. And indeed, thank you for your service. And I think we all appreciate your longstanding contribution. A question for you about the work of our Justice and Equity Committee as part of our commission's efforts. we struck this committee because a few issues related to justice and equity for diverse peoples in our county certainly were raised, and we felt that a committee that could delve into those matters and even look at the possibility of some oversight of how law and justice is carried out in this county might be prudent, or for consideration. And we've been looking at Kin County's recent charter amendments and what they've done. We've also done some exploration into the other charter counties in our state, and the extent to which those charters have non-discrimination clauses. All of them do, except for ours and Whatcom. All the other county charters say something about non-discrimination within the conduct of how the government carries its business out. Additionally, we learned that Snohomish County, in the amendment that they did to their charter in 2016, struck amended their charter to have the council create a human rights commission within their government that would be responsible for ensuring the enforcement of their non-discrimination clause within their charter. And so we've been trying to do some background research into what else exists out there, what is missing perhaps from our charter in terms of that kind of language about how we want this county government to work in the future for all peoples. And we also came across and have been informed about the creation of and passage of the resolution number 31, 2020 last year that the council passed on ensuring a safe and inclusive, safe and inclusive county for all peoples. And had a chance to talk to county manager about how what's being done about the implementation of that resolution. And so what our committee is deliberating and discussing is how we're a little concerned that a resolution is not enough to ensure issues of justice and equity and diversity and inclusion as being respected and lived out by our county government. And I'm interested to hear your perspective on the status of that resolution, how it might be implemented going forward, and whether our county might be well served by having something in the charter that talks about the importance of this county government upholding the rights of all peoples and being equitable, just, fair, inclusive, diverse, etc. Sorry, it's a long-winded statement and question, but I hope that makes a little sense. Thanks, Jamie.
Well, what we are doing after the passage of that resolution is we found out from all our departments, everybody's trying to work on something like this. So we're trying to get everybody on the same page, work together to get everyone on the same page. So we'd have one combined philosophy to support the resolution. If you want to put it in the charter, put it as a voting, that's fine. I do know that between contracts with state and federal government or grants or in our personnel policy, all those diversity, equity, and inclusion are all a part of those. And perhaps we could have an ordinance. I'm open to that.
Okay. Tony, and then David Dellendorf again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jamie, I'm trying to wrap my head around the wish for the council to be in charge of the budget process. In the charter currently, the heads of the departments present their wishes, and the auditor assembles the budget with the help of the manager. I'm not saying this that you don't know it. I'm just sorry. I'm just trying to say it. I'm trying to talk out loudly about how the process is going to work. But if the council is in charge of the budget process, what are you saving? What steps are you saving, and what control are you not having now, that you're missing from the budget process, other than the nuts and bolts of each department creating their wishes?
Well, let me see if I can say it a different way than I already did. Yes, they are collaborating, but that is not mandated in the charter. And the auditor is essentially doing the pre-editing and making decisions. This is not a labor saving issue. If we're supposed to pass the budget, then I just feel we should be in charge of preparing it with the
Oh.
county manager.
So the process would be that the county council would be collecting the information and by not having the auditor doing the collection.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
David Dellenvarsh and then Tom Starr.
Yeah, I have some concerns about what Jamie has proposed. I think Tony does too. Currently, does the auditor give any opportunity to the council to look at a draft or to consult in any way during the process, as opposed to waiting to the very end and saying, okay, here it is? Because it kind of sounds like your problem with it is that you're given a final product or a semi-final product, and you haven't been able to weigh in along the way. I would think the county manager who works for you would be involved with the auditor and giving feedback along the way. So if there were collaboration, I don't see what would be gained by what you proposed. But do you get, other than through the county manager, do you get an opportunity to review what is being discussed in the preparation process before the end result is in your hands?
We try to set some priorities and before the department heads so that they know what direction we want to go. But then they submit all that to the auditor, and the auditor starts making decisions on what they're requesting right away. So yes, again, there is collaboration, but it is not a mandated or required collaboration. And it doesn't mean it couldn't change.
So you're kind of implying that it's not mandated, but does it actually happen though, in spite of not being mandated? Is it happening between the auditor and the county manager?
It's happening.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom Starr.
Jamie, I'm on the Climate and Environmental Committee, and we haven't had you speak to us yet. So I'm going to ask one of our questions that keeps coming up. How are long-term environmental issues brought to the council and prioritized? We've heard from Kendra Smith, Erica Shook, Barbara, and we're talking a lot about how involved the council is in those decisions. And do you think that they're brought to you efficiently and in a way that the council can deal with them?
They have been so far, and since we put together our natural resources group, council is informed. And you know, some of those environmental issues, especially with Kendra and Francis, you know, are directly related to the work that I've been doing with the Puget Sound Partnership through both the Salmon Recovery Council and the Ecosystem Coordinating Board. Those are major funders of some of these projects. So yes, and I bring it to council. Council weighs in before they do the grant applications. They're already on a list of projects somewhere.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Anne Marie.
I just want to go back to the budget one more time and make sure I understand, Jamie, what your position is. And what I hear you saying is that in the charter, the auditor is the only person that is actually given authority in the budget process, and that because they work with the county manager now doesn't necessarily mean it will always be that way. And that if something like that were going to stay, language should be adopted that allows or creates more access with the council and the county manager. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
I should have written it down. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Okay. And my other understanding is that in a county the size that we have, to have 3 elected officials involved in the financing is a little cumbersome, and that we might be better served by a financial manager of that department with those 3 entities under it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Janet Barnell. You're muted, Janet.
Muted, Janet.
Not to beat a dead horse or a dead budget, but Jamie, can you give an example of hypothetically or actual where you felt or the council felt that an auditor had made a decision prior in terms of the budget, prior to being brought to council?
There's been a few instances where somebody was asking for perhaps an extra half of a, I hate to see, okay, I hope everybody knows an FTE is a full-time equivalent. So just, I didn't want to say half a person. So someone might be asking for an additional half FTE or to provide a particular service. The auditor has determined that she doesn't think they need it. So it never goes into the budget and we don't see the decision package.
That's a great example. Thank you.
So I have Dave and Jane, and then we've got to move on as well. We have another council person here. But before Dave and Jane, I wanted to ask a question, if I may. Oh, actually, Liz too. We'll go Liz too. Why don't the 3 of you go and let's see how long it takes and see if the chair gets his question. So we're going to go to Liz, and then we're going to go to Dave, and then to Jane.
Thank you, Kevin. I wanted to just give it an acknowledgement. So Jamie, I wanted to have it stated on the record and say out loud to you, thank you for stewarding the council through this absolutely horrific and unprecedented time. I appreciate Huron Lopez, I can't speak for the other islands, but seeing you at all of the COVID clinics going on, being there, reassuring people, welcoming them, and just how steady you have been through this whole really, really challenging time. And I appreciate your forward thinking as we move into some historic changes in life in general and life here in the islands. So thank you very much. You're appreciated, Jamie.
Well, thank you. And I thank Mark Tompkins and the health department, as well as across the islands, all the volunteers.
Yeah.
Dave Anderson.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jamie. It's my I want to go back to Tom Starr's question, the original one about liaisons. Is it my understanding that originally under the commission that liaisons were a structured and a rotating schedule that each commissioner would meet with the committee heads or the department heads? And now it is you feel like you have full access to department heads, but it is no longer a structured relationship between council members and department heads. Is that correct?
Yes, and it is correct. And that's part of the way we structured our working agreement with the county manager. And when you say liaison, I think of liaison as with our advisory committees, where we are there to be able to report back and keep track of what they're doing, versus direct management of our department heads.
Okay. Thank you.
Jane Fuller.
Thanks, Kevin. Jamie, just a two-sided, really, but a brief question, I think. First question is, does the county council have any interaction with the judicial branch of government in terms of, for example, what, say, the Superior Court does vis-a-vis the promotion of justice and equity in its work? We had a presentation from them in our meeting on Monday, in our committee meeting on Monday, and I'm curious to know, how do you at all interface? And when you said that each department is kind of working away on how it might address that resolution, have you had any exchange at all with that court? That was sort of one question. The other question I have that's somewhat related is, where is there any space for citizen oversight of the manner in which the county conducts its justice and equity work? We are aware of the Law and Justice Council. There's no citizen representation on that council. And would the idea of a commission or a committee of the government that is citizen formed that could provide some oversight or advice, et cetera, be of value?
Well, first of all, let me go to your first question about the judicial. They're their separate branch of government, and in addition to that, both the judges are separately elected. So we're separate but equal. We do have control of their budget, but there are certain things that have to be funded in their departments. We do drug court, but that's probably one of the only things that's optional. Everything else is mandatory. So that's kind of where that world is. And we haven't, when I was saying with the departments, we've mainly been doing the departments that are directly overseen by the county manager. And then would like to get the electeds involved. However, our two judges are very forward thinking also, and have some really good, they have good ideas on just how to run their part of the building. I'll tell you that.
And on the question of citizen oversight and any space for that within this context, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't, Jane.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
Okay, I've got Bill Apple, and then I will have the last question.
Jamie, thank you for your testimony. I want to make one thing clear, and this may be redundant, but when I heard you say the auditor gets first crack and the budget is tilted by what she thinks they need, I'm not hearing at the same time that decision is made in light of policy for which we hold the council responsible. And so I'm a little concerned as to how that first step by the auditor is initiated with direction from the council as to the policy it intends to have the budget end up supporting. Do you have any suggestion as to what would be the best structural cure for that?
Move the budget. Move the budget reporting to the council.
Okay. So Jamie, just a couple questions I have. One is section 4.401 in the charter right now discusses, it says carry out the goals and policies of the county council while acting as the representative in the budget process. It explicitly calls out the county manager to collaborate with the auditor. And this has been said, but when Mike presented to us, he said that process is it's gone very well. And I hear you saying you think it has, but what you're saying is that should be clarified in the charter, so that if we have an auditor in the future who feels differently, like a past auditor I worked with, then that's clear. My question, however, is, as I don't know if you've heard me say it, but this commission has heard me say it several times. One of my real eye-opening experiences when I was a commissioner and then a council person was the need. And I was of the mindset that I was exactly where you were, or where you are, but my mind changed to a place where I believe there needs to be an independent voice representing the budget, so that person can stand up to the county council and tell us when we're full of it, frankly. The other thing, so one question for you is, how would you maintain an independent voice when you're then responsible for half the departments and now the budget as well? And then the other thing is, I've heard from you and one other council member, the amount of time you're putting in, and you're talking about taking on a significant amount of time if you're going to be the lead for the budget. And if you're not the lead for the budget, then actually the manager is. And then that brings up a whole nother discussion for me about, should they actually be elected then? Because I want an independent voice representing the budget. And so can you help me think through this? I'm just like, I really appreciate what you're saying. And I have the same motivations and a different conclusion.
there is one statutorily thing that county councils have to do is pass a budget and own it. And what I'm saying is, if I'm going to pass a budget and own it, then I ought to own it. And I ought to be able to explain it. I ought to be able to be responsible. We end up saying no to a lot of people. And we do I spend a lot of time on the budget. Just because I didn't put down the number in the right Eden code in our system doesn't mean that I don't know where the numbers are and I don't know where the amounts are. And it also just, the more things in budgeting that we can actually know, and we do it, it would have to be done in direct with the policy, and all the discussions are in public.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question or not. You can still come to a different conclusion.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's interesting for me that you and I are seeing the same thing with different conclusions, or at least starting from the same motivation. So, but thank you. Thank you for that answer. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to have to move us on. We have Council Member Wolf here already.
I just want to thank you for the time, and I managed to run over even though we got started early.
Yes, you did, but that's okay. Jamie, this was a really informative conversation. And
Thank you, Jamie.
it's one of the reasons why I shortened our other agenda topics, so that we can have more time for you and for Councilwoman Wolf. So Jamie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.
Okay, and we're going to move right into Councilmember Wolf. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for running. Thank you for representing us. Thank you for representing Orcas. It's great to have you in the place where you are. We would like you to talk about kind of your thoughts on the position. You've only been there a handful of weeks, but you've already had a crash course in county government, and we'd love your perspective on the job, your thoughts so far.
Let's see. It's a big beast, this county, which is kind of surprising considering that we're only 17,000-ish people. But we've got the moving parts to the county government are really heavily concentrated in two areas. And one of them is the human services piece of it, and one is that public works part of it. And that's just such a, money-wise, the public works is huge. And I did not realize coming into this how much of that and how much of the environmental resources is actually funded through grant funding. So there's a lot of money that's already dedicated flowing through the county. I think that one of the most gratifying things about this position has been to find out how professional the staff is, and how when they are empowered and when they are respected, they rise to the occasion and perform. And I have found that to be the case with most of the people that I'm working with. So there's a lot that goes on that doesn't meet the eye. Probably the meetings themselves are, gosh, maybe 1/10 of my time. Maybe you look at it as 20% of my time once you count in preparation for those meetings. But a great deal of what goes on is talking about the future, thinking about the future, getting prepared for conversations on land use, working with outside agencies and sitting on boards where grant monies are coming through for different kinds of health and human services and mental health, and also community interaction and working with constituents. So the things that I see that are low-hanging fruit are things like getting you know, there's little things that you can do here and there, but there's a lot of systemic things that we're just beginning to work on, and it's really exciting to be part of it. I heard some question about the equity piece of things, and I wanted to let you know that Mike Thomas, the county manager, and I have been working on that DEI resolution, and we are at the step right now. It turns out there's a lot of DEI work bubbling up through different parts of the organization. So there's a group through the land bank called the Jedis, and they are working on things like renaming places through the lens of equity and inclusion. And there's constituent groups, and there's people in all kinds of different departments who are starting to work on this. And I was able to connect a number of them. There's people in senior services, there's people, you know, Kendra and Frankie are doing their thing over in environmental resources. And we're starting to be able to weave together a group that can serve as a core for the kinds of systemic change that we need to see, both as employers and as a service provision organization. And so Mike and I are really feeling that at this point, it's appropriate to find somebody to come in who's a consultant who can do a baseline evaluation of where we're at in terms of both identifying DEI issues within the organization and as service providers working with different constituencies, where our gaps are there and what kind of things we need to work on. And then from there, we can do some general education with our staff, and then we can move on to actually doing pieces of the work all the way through the organization. So this is a really neat thing. And it's one of those things that, again, is going on in a way that's probably not particularly visible publicly. I probably have said enough for now. Can I take your questions?
Yeah, definitely. Any questions for Councilmember Wolf? Liz, please. And then Bob.
Cindy, this is probably just a pretty simple question, but it's been brought up to us that the county council has gone from meeting weekly to meeting every other week. And I just wonder how we respond to people when they ask us about that, what the thinking was, why you all did that.
That was kind of a decision on the part of our chair and our manager. And what we've done is we were meeting twice a week for the first couple of months that we were in our positions. And that was so that Christine and I could really have a look at the organization and have the different departments come and talk about what it is they did and what their relationship was to the other departments in the county. I think the last couple of, like the last month and a half, it seems like we've had a couple of meetings drop out. And there's also, it's also traditional that the county council doesn't meet on weeks where it was a holiday. So apparently that's another thing, is that if it was a holiday week, county council doesn't meet because staff isn't prepared to meet with us. That was the explanation I was given.
So going forward, you actually will be meeting weekly, or like for holiday weeks?
I think she's hiding under the desk.
Yeah.
Right away.
Understandably.
Come back, Cindy, come back.
We will be meeting, we are scheduled for May to meet 6 times. We're going to be meeting twice a week for 3 of the weeks in May. And then in June, we're scheduled to meet once a week for 3 weeks. August, September. Well, it's the schedule is pretty much once a week, except for holiday weeks, it looks like, through the summer. And then in October, when we roll into, I guess, budget, then we meet twice a week. Again.
Okay, so kind of a misnomer that you all are just meeting every other week and
Oh, yeah.
twiddling your thumbs in between times.
No.
And, we have two other people with their hands up, but I just want to clarify. Cindy, when you say twice a week, is that your Monday, Tuesday meetings?
Correct.
Okay, so, okay. So
Mhm.
that's historical. I mean, when I was on the county commission and the county council, we met on Monday, Tuesdays
Mhm.
as well. So that's the same it's been.
Mhm.
But you're already meeting every week. Because the county manager told us that you were now meeting every other week.
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
That's at least the calendar that I am looking at. In April, we met every other week. Other than that,
Okay.
yeah, it's every week except when there's a holiday week. Yeah, except in July, in July and August, that'll be different. But yeah, otherwise it's every week except when there's a holiday week. There should be a publicly available schedule.
Yes.
Okay, so Bob and then Tony.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I've got 3 questions. Should I ask them all now or save some for later or what?
Why don't you ask 2 and then let's go
Okay.
around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rank voting.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing all right? What would you think of the charter, a charter amendment creating a new position of climate and environment advocate, an elected position of climate and environment advocate? How would that strike you as a council person?
I am not certain how that would achieve what I think are the goals here. I am under the impression that what really needs to happen is this needs to be, I think that a dedicated position is a great idea, but I'm not, what I would love to see is somebody who's really skilled, who is reporting to council and whose job it is to go into the different departments, work with the department heads to identify different programs that could be, and actual solutions that could be gone after, and be writing grants and seeking money in order to be able to implement those programs. And that I'm not sure that sounds like another elected person to me. That sounds to me like, a person who's a really highly skilled consultant who's maybe, or somebody basically who's either answering to Mike or who's answering directly to the county council, who is working with those department heads for the purpose of making a plan that we can follow that has actual concrete metrics and programs, again, that we can be pursuing
thank
and
you.
can help to write policy about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. My second question is, should the positions of assessor, auditor, and treasurer be combined, or some combination of those two be combined? 3 be combined?
Yeah, I don't, honestly, I don't know enough about what kind of a workload that would mean for somebody if you combine those positions.
Thank you.
I know that I know the auditor's an awfully busy woman. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go to Tony and then Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cindy, welcome, and thank you for doing what you do. I asked the question to Jamie, and I'd like to ask you, and I know you're not that long in your position, so it might be, but just give me whatever feel that you can. In one of our subcommittees, we're evaluating the relationship between the council and the county manager, not as a negative way, but as trying to figure out how things are working. In your view, the county manager has a set of instructions that were signed as a resolution about 7 years ago. Since you've been working with that position, how has that worked out? How is the relationship going through the process of dealing with a county manager who is essentially the chief executive of the county? Maybe that's the right term, but in my mind, that's how it works. And how the council interacts with that position.
When I first came on, that was a big question in my mind, was how is that going to work out? I am from, my previous lifetime was spent in a sales position, executive sales, in a corporate setting. And so to me, it's a very familiar setup. What you got is the county council acting as a board of directors, more or less. And then you've got your chief executive who's answerable to the county council. And the nice thing about having that kind of a setup is then if you see there's accountability there from the executive. So if you see that direction is not being followed, you don't have to speak too loudly to make it clear what your priorities are and what you expect, because it's clear who's the boss, essentially. And I think, on my part, it's also very important to have learned throughout my life not to micromanage. And when you've got a competent executive, you need to let them go about their business. And I've found Mike to be very responsive that way so far. I don't, time will tell, of course, but thus far, he has evidenced a lot of relief that he's not going to be micromanaged, and he's evidenced a great deal of goodwill about working on the things that I think are important and on finding ways to incorporate those into the workload of the county staff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you. If I may, can I have a little follow-up, Mr. Chair? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
So the follow-up is, as a council member, and say you need information from a department that is not an elected department, but an appointed department head, if you will, is that relatively easily to get? Do you have to go through the process of going directly to that position, or you go through the county manager for that position, for that information?
In general, I can just approach the department head. It's no issue whatsoever. And that's delineated in our relationship, when that was what was the negotiated relationship with the county executive before I ever got there. And I found that to be very helpful, because what that does is it allows me to get information and have conversations with people about whether ideas are feasible, or just pick up bits of information. Hey, what do you know about this parcel? Or what do you know about, how plowing has been done in the past? And I don't have to, it's not cumbersome. I don't have to go through Mike. But on the other hand, if I want to change the way something's done, I know that I either have to propose it to council, and work is directed by council. It's not directed by one member of council. Or if it's something that is going to affect your workload, that's maybe a particularly onerous project, then I ask Mike, and he's the one who will go and ask out, like for this whole vacation rental process. There were pieces of information I wanted collected that were definitely going to be a time commitment for Erica Shook to put together. And in that case, I went to Mike and said, Mike, here's the list of things that I would like to know. And then he went to Erica and figured out how she could get those things together.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you so much. That's I agree with you, and that's exactly how I think it should be. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Jane, Olivia, and Anne-Marie, and Maureen.
Hi, Cindy. Congratulations on being a new member of the County Council. I'm based on Lopez myself, but it's nice to meet you and hear from you. I'm sitting on I'm co-leading with Kyle Davies, the Justice and Equity Committee of our commission. And I just wanted to share a couple bits of information that we've recently learned that could be of value or information to your work that you have told us about in terms of sort of kickstarting efforts around looking at diversity, equity, inclusion in relation to that resolution that was passed last year by county. It's great to hear from Mike Thomas that indeed you're sort of the point person on council that is working to help try and coordinate some efforts around that. And so very pleased to hear that. And very supportive of that. Our Justice and Equity Committee recently requested from Mike Thomas some data that perhaps, I don't know, you're interested in seeing as well, or have already asked for, but we've asked for a sort of a gender and diversity disaggregated data set for all the staff in the county government, as well as those who sit on the 37 some odd commissions, boards, committees of government, to do a sort of a preliminary gender and diversity gap analysis of what that looks like, and have offered to do that for the county and share that with your team that is beginning to explore this, and the consultant that you may hire to look at what's going on internally within the government in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I realize that that's going to add a bit of work to the county manager, but or department staff, but I think it could be of great value in what you're trying to do with this resolution. So, and we'd be happy to do a little bit of analysis on our side for that effort. We wanted to, I think our committee would be interested in sharing with you also information that the County Superior Court Judge's office has been doing some very important work within their office on these issues in terms of law and justice, equity, and diversity. And I think some sharing of information would be very valuable as you chart out what direction departments might want to go in pursuing these issues within themselves. So that might be a good connection to make in terms of having an exchange.
Yeah, I actually had coffee with our new public defender the other day, who is not technically part of the courts. He's actually part of our organization, but he is part of that Law and Justice Coalition, and he sent me over some names of some of the trainers that they're looking at as well. So yeah.
And they have a lot of resources as well ready at hand that could be of value. So the question I had for you, I have one question for you, and that is, we're aware that there's a Law and Justice Council within our county government that does not have citizen representation at all. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on the value of some citizen oversight of the county government with respect to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how those are and also law and justice, and how those are being handled by our county government. And I guess the last point I wanted to share with you was in the work we've been doing, there is no clause in our charter that speaks to non-discrimination. And we're one of 2 county charters in Washington State out of 7 that says nothing about non-discrimination. And for our committee, I think that's a bit of a gap, shall we say.
That would be.
Thanks.
So I think your question speaks to an issue that is part of that DEI piece, which is how do we go about appointing our citizens commissions, and how are we bringing people to the table? Whose voices are there? So that's a process I think that needs to be looked at, and I don't know if you want to look at that through charter review or whether that's something that we look at internally. And one of the things that I was able to include in that resolution as a citizen was an ask for diversity on the Civil Service Commission. And because right now we've got, how it's composed, right? I mean, it's 3 white men over the age of 60 living on Orcas, 2 of whom are police officers, and 1 of whom is relatively wealthy. And so we don't have we don't have what I would like to see in terms of citizen oversight on the sheriff's department or on any kind of, yeah, any of that. I think carefully constructed, that there's a lot of room for a citizen oversight committee, but I would hate to see yet another committee that really doesn't have any power. So the way that that's structured and the way it works with the Washington State Constitution and that Civil Service Commission, I think is really an important element of what you're looking at. Okay.
We're going to go to Olivia, Anne Marie after that.
Thank you, Cindy, for being here. It's been great to hear you speak. I really appreciate it. Thank you. My question is based around, we've had a lot of public input now. We've had 2 town halls. We've received many, many emails from people. We as a commission have discussed quite a bit about the importance for the focus on the environment and the climate. And we have a committee specifically dedicated to that. And I hear that you would not support the idea of an elected official. So this is a topic that we can't really ignore as a commission. So my question for you is, would you support the idea of either a committee, a board, or an employee under the environmental resources team that is specifically dedicated to the environment and climate?
You bet. Yeah. I think, boy, environmental resources, the people who are working on that team right now, if we can strengthen that department and if we can set up a structure for them to guide the rest of county government through the kinds of transitions that we need to make, I think they could be very, very effective.
Thank you.
Anne Marie.
Hi, Cindy. Thanks for
Hi,
joining us.
Anne-Marie.
I've heard a lot of concern about how the lodging tax has been spent and or is being used. And one of the issues that has come before us is the idea of bringing that contract that is, I think, goes to what is called the Visitors Bureau inside the government, so that the parties involved in that kind of are better seated in the county. Do you have a position on that?
I don't. I know that the lodging tax has some pretty clear restrictions on how it can be used, but there are some things about it that might surprise most people, like lodging tax could be used to subsidize the building of worker housing for tourist workers, as long as it's within, I think it's within half a mile of a public transportation node. So I think there's a lot of room for a more creative and responsive, or what do I want to say? A better integrated use of those funds within the county.
Yeah, I was specifically talking about the bureau that does the marketing and everything.
The Visitors Bureau, yeah. I don't have a position on that. Okay.
All right, Maureen, Tom Starr, and then Bob O'Connell gets the last question.
Thank you. It's nice to see you here, Cindy. Thank you so much for being here. I have a question that people keep coming up to me and asking, or they have over the years, and they certainly are having it now. I've been on the island for 27 years, and I was on the last charter review, and it always seems as though our government in San Juan County goes through changes. They take on projects, they make commitments to do things that often fall like a thud and never get finished or accomplished. And it's a great source of concern to a lot of citizens. So when we were in the last charter review, there was a big focus on making the council responsible. that the buck stopped with them, not with the county administrator, but with the council. So I would say that most citizens have no idea what the county manager does. It just doesn't cross their plates ever to find out or see. They're away from that. And it's so important for the citizens to know that the county council are the lead. So I know it's unfair because you're just starting, but I have a feeling that you have an old soul here and you probably have been watching things for a long time. Is San Juan County really seriously looking ahead? Because there is a feeling that they are not, that they're short-sighted, that they get caught up in the minutia and they forget about the larger picture. So can you comment on that?
Are you talking about the staff, the people who actually work for the county?
I'm just talking about the things that we need in this county. The environmental issues, the roads issues, the things that we need to make plans for and be looking ahead.
Mm-hmm. I don't know yet. That's the honest answer. I don't know yet.
That's fair.
I am new enough and there's been enough of a shift in culture that I don't know yet what this staff is capable of. I will tell you that there are people on this staff that are definitely looking ahead. And I will tell you there are people who are much more cautious and I don't know where that caution comes from yet. So I don't know if that will dissipate over time.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom Starr and then Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I think Olivia asked my question and Cindy answered it, so thank you.
Asked and answered. Love it. Bob O'Connell.
Cindy, I wanted to ask you about the budget and the role of council in creating that, but I'd rather hear you tell us whether the sheriff ought to be elected or appointed and why.
Is this all confidential?
No,
Do you have
I
to
don't
work
think
with the
so.
man?
I would say no.
I think this is public.
Welcome to being elected, Cindy.
Yeah, I think I honestly, I really think that the sheriff should be appointed. I mean, that's when it comes right down to it. I do think the sheriff should be appointed. And,
Why?
you know, part of that comes out of my history as a person who grew up in Los Angeles. And I don't believe that there should be police organizations that are not under civilian oversight and authority.
Thank you.
It's nothing personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. That's all.
Okay, we are going to have to move on. Cindy, I want to sincerely thank you. I think both you and Jamie, frankly, this has been a really informative discussion, thought-provoking conversation. But I just want to personally thank you. It is very clear to me that you're not just hitting the ground running, but you're doing your homework. And I really appreciated this dialogue. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and call you out on this. The Elections Committee, the Justice and Equity Committee, and the Operations Committee have not submitted all of their minutes over the last couple of weeks. So we're going to do a round robin of committee reports anyway, because I think it's really important that the rest of the commission hear what's happening on the committees. And that's the main reason why I shortened the agenda and punted some stuff back to operations, but because my vice chair is angry with me, I'm going to try and bring that back onto our agenda anyway. But what I would like to do is just briefly, if there's any highlights, if there's no highlights since we last heard from you, we don't need to hear from you. But if there's any important issues that have come up or presentations that you had, if you could just let us know and just spend a few minutes each. And so Jane, let's go to you with Justice and Equity first. You're muted. Although that would
That's
make
not
it-
fair. I was just looking for my little talking points from last week that I didn't get to speak to you
great, make
guys
it brief.
about. Man, that's brutal. No, I haven't done my homework. Of course not. Okay. Hey, Kyle, you want to help me out here? Okay. So we did have a couple bullet points actually that we prepared for you all to hear last week, but we didn't get the opportunity to just share with you. So this is strictly off the top of my head. It's going to be very short and brief. And please, I would just ask my other committee members, that is Kyle and Sharon and Kevin, if I miss a really critical aspect, then please compliment what I have to say. So by way of ongoing discussions, well, first of all, we are continuing to hear from various stakeholders on issues of justice and equity as they play out in our county, including, as I all shared with you, a presentation by the Superior Court of our county's office of our Judge Loring and the administrator who works with the Juvenile Court Services and other programs, the administrator of those programs, Linnea Anderson, David Anderson's wonderful wife. He is so fortunate to be married to that woman. Anyway, they're rock stars, and we had a great presentation. If anybody has any questions about that presentation, please be in touch with us. So that stakeholder also looking to speak with other stakeholders in our government and also outside of the government that we feel are important to hear from about issues of justice and equity and how they play out in our county. So we've lined up some folks to hear from in the weeks ahead, and we'll be sharing that with you all as they get confirmed. Let me just say, and you heard me speak to a couple of issues that we're learning about as we move ahead, and that is that, you know, it's very clear our charter says nothing about issues of non-discrimination that is of a structural nature that would be valuable for our county. And that's, I think I can speak for our committee to say that that's concerning out of the 7 charters, county charters that I referenced to you all. We are gathering some information in very short order, I hope, with a contact that Kevin has with someone in the Snohomish County government to talk about the Human Rights Commission that they struck in 2016 to see what that commission is able to do, does, et cetera. So we're trying to explore a little bit about that. We are needing to take stock of how we will be sufficiently, I think you could say, inclusive of various peoples that are represented in our county when we're talking about issues of basic rights, of issues of basic law and justice and diversity and inclusion. And so we're mindful of how we can ensure that various stakeholders' voices are heard so that we can feel we've heard those, and we've thought about how our charter might need to do some service to our diversity that exists in our county. But I think importantly, you've also been hearing something we're deliberating, which is the lack of any kind of citizens oversight mechanism within our county government for issues of justice and equity, diversity and inclusion. And our sense that the resolution that was passed middle of last year by our council that Cindy Wolf spoke about doesn't have the kind of teeth that we really feel are necessary to do service to these important issues. And by the way, I would say that we're also looking forward to speaking with the Civil Service Board person the woman that's been sitting on that board. Her first name is Catherine, I believe. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her last name. She's been serving in service of that Civil Service Board for some time. That Civil Service Board is the board that is responsible, that the state mandates our county has to strike to oversee the manner in which our police service, our sheriff's office is staffed. And we heard from the sheriff inaccurately, actually, that he has no opportunity to really push that Civil Service Board to say, I want some diversity in my workforce. That is blatantly untrue. And I've done some research into state law around that. And that's deeply concerning, to be quite frank. And on a personal note, I'm just going to share, I was quite concerned about the sheriff's overall presentation with regard to the complete and utter lack of unconscious implicit bias. So I think there's a lot to be done, frankly, in this county around these issues. And those are some of the things we're deliberating. We've got a heck of a lot more work to do, and we're conscious of the challenges of time. We are also making efforts to have meaningful interaction with our process committee colleagues and those who are looking at rights of nature in both process and also environment and climate change. I apologize for speaking so long, but I got stuck on the hot seat. Thanks, Kevin. Any questions or contributions by my committee colleagues?
Sharon, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage people to look at the notes on that meeting, because there were a lot of good things that were said, and suggestions for what could and should be baked into the structure of the county. And so those are in the notes, bullet points in the notes.
Thank you, Sharon. And Sharon has been our rock star note taker, as I know she's been for others as well. And apologies for not getting our March 8th meeting notes up there, which have been approved. We have not yet approved March 15 and notes from the 22nd. So yeah, we will be getting those up very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Dave, you want to go next? And maybe a little shorter, and no slam, Jane. That's not a slam to you. I thought that was a very informative presentation. So thank you. But Dave?
Great. Thank you, Kevin. And this is for the governance committee. And thank you again for inviting those speakers today. They were very informative, and a lot of what they brought forward to us, I think, will definitely be spilling into our committee and talking in further our conversations about the nature of the county manager and what the oversight of the council. That's been an ongoing and very specific conversation we've been having. And I think we will be continuing that for a little while longer, but we've done some reorganizing of how we're approaching the list of issues that we're addressing. And we look forward to tackling those issues and moving forward. So that's pretty much what we've been doing, and happy to take any questions. The governance committee meets on 7 to 8 on Thursdays, and we love to have anybody come who's interested. Thank you.
But because of the number of members on the governance committee, if you do come, you will keep your video off and you will remain muted.
Great. Yep.
Okay, who wants to go next? Anne-Marie? Excellent, thank you. And then Tony.
Okay, so we heard from Kendra Smith, who is the Environmental Resource Division Manager, and she's in Public Works, and she is also the Deputy Public Works Director. So that was a very interesting conversation. And yes, everybody, practically all the people that really work on the marine resources side are on state or federal funding. We also heard from Erica in community development, and that was very informative as well. She's really caught up with the comp plan, and that's just getting the comp plan finished and through the process. And then the permitting system, because right now it takes 20 weeks to get a permit completed. So she really doesn't have a lot of time or resources to be looking at how the comp plan is being implemented in the county or in different departments. And then we heard from Barbara Rosencotter, who was the former lead salmon recovery person. And she did that job for 10 years. And it was a chaotic time in our government, as she pointed out. But she also spoke to the issue of how difficult it is to be in a department and to be the person that is there speaking out against the department and other departments and the way they are handling the implementation of different rules and regulations that impact the environment. And I walked away from that more committed than ever that it needed to be a separate person elected to really be an advocate for the environment. And we spent today mostly talking about what should that position look like, what should be involved in it. And it was really just a discussion to kind of start leading us down the path, finding out what else we need to know and where we ought to be headed. I think that pretty much takes care of it. Anybody else need to say anything? Good, we're finished then.
Wow. I would just say if anybody wants to go back and look at the notes, the conversation, particularly with Barbara, I had the same conclusion. It was so clear that anybody trying to work on environmental or climate issues, and if it's not an independently elected official, they will not get very far, period. It's not going to happen. Even if you have the best counsel in the world who's totally committed, because they have other priorities.
And Barbara
So-
talked about how you really need to have people under you or over you that are supportive of you, because the work you're doing is so difficult to do anyway. It's a heavy lift. And we've been talking in our group a lot about the importance of advisory body.
Jane, you have a question?
Yeah, just on that point, a quick question for you guys. So thank you for suggesting we go look at those notes for that discussion and others that you've had. So, but just to be clear, so can you speak a little bit more to what you learned from her about, say, for example, this current council with these two new members, with Jamie, really want to advance these issues in a meaningful way with the tools that they have. And so what is it that she is challenged by within the way the government is structured that really makes it difficult for her? Can you just speak to that a teeny bit?
Well,
And then-
Barbara retired, she left. Kendra is going to leave next year, okay? And she came in basically to be an environmental person, okay? So Kendra gave us some other suggestions in terms of things that she would like to see happen, but hasn't been able to do that. As you can imagine, if you're sitting in the planning department and you're going to stand up and say, you can't do that, you can't approve that, that's a difficult position. If you're in public works and somebody wants to put a culvert someplace and you're saying, that's going to stop the flow of salmon going down that creek. That's a very difficult position, especially when you're kind of buried down under. And chances are it's going to go up through your division, maybe never even get to the manager of the county, much less to the county council. So
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
you get the drift.
I have
One,
two other-
Anne-Marie,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Anne-Marie, I thought Kendra said she's leaving this June.
No, I thought it was a year later.
Okay.
No,
But
maybe I'm
in-
wrong. I could be wrong.
It's a year from June, a year from June.
Okay, in any event, it's a big loss.
Yes, incredible.
So I wanted to add on to a couple things for Jane quickly. One is just the prioritization. So the council, as we've heard just now, has a whole bunch of different priorities they have. And Cindy, who is a rock star on these issues of environment and climate, her statement in the very beginning was public works and public health are the biggest areas of her focus right now. There's, so one issue is the issue of prioritization. The other thing I will say is that even when I was on the council and the commission, and I had a huge environmental agenda, as a matter of fact, probably 80% of what I wanted to do was environmental. I probably got 1/10, not even. I got 5% of it done. I needed a second vote on everything. And if I didn't have a second vote, it was dead. So even when you have a progressive council who wants to act, it still is the legislative bureaucracy. And the final thing I will say, which is across the board on all of our issues, we are setting up a county's constitution. We could have a county council and a county manager, an entire elected body right now who wants to do everything we're talking about, and they could all be gone in 4 years. We're creating a structure that is as permanent as you can get on with regard to county government in Washington state. So we're creating a constitution that will force these issues to be dealt with instead of depending on who the next council member is. So sorry for my tangent there. I think Olivia had a hand up. Was that a question on this? Yeah, please.
Yeah. Has your committee discussed where on the organizational chart the elected person would be for climate and environment?
Well, it would be a separate entity, just like the auditor is, or the treasurer is, or the assessor is. It
So
would
would this
it would
person
have
report?
interface with the San Juan County Council would have the legislative piece, at least part of it, and
Mhm.
maybe all of it, and they'd also have the budget.
So they would report to the county manager.
No,
No,
they
they,
wouldn't report. They'd be separate. They would be
Separate.
a separate elected, just like the assessor does not report to the San
Okay.
Juan County Council or the manager. It's a separate, it would be a separate entity. And the good news for the county council members is that some of these issues will be very, very hot and very contentious in the community. So it gives them cover on one side. And then when we make major progress in climate areas and we have a regular report card about how we're reducing this and promoting this, they can say, we did this. So I think it's a win-win for them. It might take a little while for them to get there.
okay, so we're going to move on and we're definitely going to go over. And so I'm going to ask that we go 10 minutes over on today's agenda because we've got in 8 minutes public comment and then we have a brief executive session we're going to go into as well. And then we still have new business. So committees, who hasn't gone yet? Who has a committee that needs to say something? And only if you have an update. If you don't have an update, it's fine. So we'll go to Bob and then Tony. Sorry.
All right, as the group knows, the process committee is our biggest job is the Bill of Rights, which is going to include the rights of nature. That's huge, humongous, and the kind of the little orphan there is the preamble, which is the introduction to the Bill of Rights that we have to produce also. All right. We got 2 new assignments just this last week. I think they came out of the public meetings that we had. One assignment was Earth Charter, and the other assignment was the vision statement, which came out of the county comprehensive plan. So what we have done is we have decided to try to mine out of the Earth Charter and the vision statement enough. We've decided to mine what provisions we could find that would be applicable to the kind of Bill of Rights that we would want, specifically as they pertained to the rights of nature. And we created 2 little mini subcommittees, Kevin. We created 2 little subcommittees, and these subcommittees are going to deal with the Earth Charter. That's Liz and Patty are going to do that, and Kyle and Bill are going to deal with the comp plan vision statement and try to find provisions in there. We discussed the preamble today with hopes that, was it today? Yesterday, with hopes that we would come out with a preamble, and that didn't happen. So I listened very closely to what everybody in the committee said. And while they're off doing their subcommittee things, I'm going to try to wordsmith and draft the preamble proposal we've been working with and try and make it reflect all of those things and bring it back next week. And we will adopt a preamble next week and be sending it by the next day to the larger group. Next week, we will also be discussing the whole issue of findings to support our Bill of Rights, which is something that was brought up by Bill Apple and is very, very important and apropos. And we will be also discussing who ought to be our rights of nature speakers. So if there is input from anybody that would like to talk with us about that, just let us know. Okay, that's it.
Great. Hey, Tony, and then Maureen is going to be speaking for operations, I believe.
Yeah, our elections committee, we have a great group. We wrapped up 6 items already, and we're proposing on sending a statement to the CRC to consider to move forward to the elections department. A new item came up, which is ranked choice voting, that we think is going to be a big discussion. That's going to be discussed tomorrow evening at 4 o'clock. We have Mylene Henley, the county auditor, is coming in to chat with us, and we also asked Camelin from the elections department to sit in, and we'll see how that conversation will go, and then we'll report back to you next week. Thank you. Great team we have on the elections group.
Okay, I have to step away for 2 seconds. So we have questions from Bob and from Bill, and then we're going to go to Maureen.
Tony, how large is your committee? I'm thinking about wanting to come to visit. Is that possible?
17 people.
Your committee.
No, I'm just kidding. We're 6.
Okay, well, I think I may show up, and if you need to toss me off of there, you can toss me off.
All right. Our chair is pretty strict, so be careful.
Yeah, he rules with an iron fist. He's kind of like a dictator, actually.
I kind of like that. Sometimes I need that. Yeah.
Bill, go ahead. You're muted.
Bill?
I just want to alert people that every single committee who comes up with a proposition has to have findings to buttress it. And Randy agrees. So don't just come out with a result, come out with a proposed finding that we will all have to agree to as a consideration. We're doing findings in our committee because I think we've got the fuzziest of all. But people are coming up with some pretty neat ideas. Be prepared to justify them beyond it ain't fair, because you have to assume that a court is going to look at this.
Well,
Sorry,
that ain't
Olivia.
fair.
Sorry, Olivia. I thought that was a question for me. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. Sorry. Oh, Kevin is back.
I was just going to say that I thought Bill's comment wasn't fair. Jane, do you have a question on this?
No, just a comment on a piece that Bill shared around through Catherine on March 8th that we should all read. It's a very good memo that he wrote on private property and rights of nature. And if you haven't read it, we should give him a big vote of thanks for putting that together. It's very dense and important. So if you haven't read it, read it. It's useful. Thank you for writing it, Bill.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Bill.
Then we're going to Maureen.
All right, so I have to report on 2 committees, elected versus appointed, and then operations, because Paul is not here.
And Maureen, let me tell you that in 2 minutes, I'm going to break for public comment because I do strictly at 10 minutes too. So why don't you
What would you like me to do?
I would like you to dive in, and then in 2 minutes, I may interrupt you, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, elected versus appointed, we have been moving slowly, but naturally quite quickly through our various numbers. We have 7 or 8 topics. We have a couple completed. We have a couple of findings already written. We are waiting for feedback from the county manager on some cost analysis, and we're going to be tackling the sheriff's position next Monday. Operations has had a setback today, but we're prepared. Oh, I will say this about elected. We are prepared to move forward and hopefully complete our list by mid-April with findings for anything that's going to go forward. And then we're going to sit down and go through all of these again and see which ones we choose to forward to the full commission. And so operations, we had several ones completely buttoned up today. We got some bad news from MRSC regarding the elected positions being exempt from the personnel manual. So you'll hear more on that. We'll be dealing with ombudsman and more. So we will be prepared to go back to the committee with some of these and fix them. Done.
Well, thank you, Maureen. Okay, right at 5:50. So we're going to go into public comment, and then are there any other committees that need to report out? I think we're okay. Anybody else? Okay, so just for commissioners' understanding, we're going to go to public comment, and then we will go to new business if there is any, and then we need to go into an executive session. So that is when only commissioners will stay on the call. So with that, we'll open it up to public comment. And if anybody would like to speak? Yeah, Alexandra, please go ahead.
Thanks. This is just an observation, and I'm not sure how it relates to the charter, but I know always there's this consideration of where's the money going to come from to pay for this position, how overloaded the staff is and unable to get all the work done. And I've been sitting in on a variety of different meetings, the county council, planning commission, various of the subcommittees of this group and several other things. And it's my observation that there's a large amount of staff time spent sitting in on those meetings. And often what they're doing is making the same presentation to various groups. And I'm just thinking, why would that need to be live? that maybe, and again, I don't know if this applies to the charter, but it just occurred to me that in the age of digital things, couldn't some sort of digital education be available so that new people coming onto a commission, new people joining the county council, I know things change from time to time, but that there could be some basic educational requirement that might be able to be streamlined by having some things identified, pre-recorded things identified, so we're not using up all the staff time doing presentations to various groups on the same issues over and over again. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public?
I'd like to speak, Kevin.
Yeah, please. Mylene Henley, please go ahead.
Start my video, but I don't see my video, so.
We don't see it either, but we can hear you.
Oh, I see, there it is. Because I had the thing closed. Yeah, I try not to talk at these meetings unless I'm asked to, because you know me, I have opinions on everything. And it's everybody should be allowed to express their opinion and perspective. I'm concerned though that some of the things that the council chair said are not correct, and I have to correct those because I don't want you to walk away thinking that what he said is law. I've said before that the auditor doesn't prepare the budget in a vacuum or alone. In addition to the budget team, the county manager is a key player in that process, and is, as you pointed out, Kevin, by charter, the council's representative in the budget process. So they definitely have a hand in the process. And for those of you who may not know how the county manager works with the council, although they can't talk to each other, he can talk to each of them. So he is constantly getting their interest and, gauging their feelings and communicating for them with other groups. So, that is significant that he is their player in the process. The chair also said that the auditor might choose to fund the position, and the council doesn't even see the decision packages with his words. That is blatantly untrue. Since 2014, the preliminary budget book, which I give to the council every year, has included every single one of the decision packages. That did not happen prior to the auditors having the budget, by the way. When the county manager had it, that was not the case. So they see every decision, every request that the departments turn in. In addition, they get presentations from the departments themselves, who have the freedom to, ask for something that the budget team did not include in the final budget. By the way, the auditor is required by law to turn in a balanced budget. There is no way you can give a balanced budget to council and include every single request. So yes, there is some judgment, but it is not made alone. It is made with input from the council's representative, the county manager, and everything that was requested is visible to the full council. And the other thing I would say is there's not a single county in the state. Well, no, let me put that in other ways. The only county in the state in which there is not an independent elected assessor, auditor, and treasurer, although in one of those counties, the assessor and treasurer are one position, is King County. So it's not true to say other counties have all three offices working from the council. So that's yeah, in counties, especially the small ones, all of those offices are independent. Can I answer questions? I see Maureen has her hand up.
Question from Maureen. Maureen, you have a question for Mylene?
Yeah, Mylene, are you a CPA?
I am not. I should have
Thank
corrected
you.
that. I am an enrolled agent. I am not a CPA, and I've never said so, and you won't see anything from me that says that I am.
Thank you.
It's a common mistake.
Thank you very much, Mylene.
Welcome. Thanks for listening.
Well, and also Mylene, I'll say it again, I've said it before, but I think you've sat in on every single one of our meetings, or maybe only missed
I've
part
missed
of
a couple.
but just thank you for your participation.
It's an important process, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public?
Yeah, there's another person that has their hand up.
I'm sorry, I don't see it. Who is it?
It's me, Micheline Halliday.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, hi Kevin. Thanks for letting me
Hi.
speak. Hello, everybody. I'm a resident of San Juan Island. I went to the preamble and process meeting yesterday, March 23rd. It was the best meeting I ever went to. I want to thank all the members here who were there. You guys, I mean, you are speaking for me because I'm not a good public speaker, and your voices, they were so elegant. They just spoke right out of my heart. So I thank you for that. I have a quick question. I tried to attend last Wednesday and today the environment and climate meeting, and I just can't find a link on the county website anywhere. It wasn't in the agenda. And anyway, am I the wrong date? Wednesday at 10 o'clock?
No,
In the
that is
morning?
right. That is the right time. And I am very sorry if there has been a lack of visibility on that. It should have been posted. So
Okay.
our
It
staff,
was on the
Catherine,
calendar.
yeah, it is. So I thought it was as well, but we will make sure it is on the county website. I see two hands who are smarter than me. So I'm going to go to Olivia and Liz.
You can find the meeting link on the CRC, so the Charter Review Commission webpage, and I'm hoping you can find that. And I'll make sure to email that to you. What's your email address? Actually, I think I have it. You've sent it to us before, sent something to us before,
Yeah, I was gonna
correct?
say, put it in the chat too.
I'll put it in the chat. Okay, thank you, Olivia. Thanks,
Of course.
everybody.
And I just wanted to say that you're not the only person. Someone that did attend the meeting today had it sounded like he spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to get there. So
Okay.
Thank you for bringing this up again. It's really
Okay,
important.
thanks, Anne Marie. Thanks, everybody.
And thank you for your kind words as well. What we will do is make sure that the charter website on the off the homepage of the county website has each of the subcommittee links visible.
It's on the calendar.
So, Liz, yeah, but calendars are, you just put a link to it. Just say, here's the subcommittees and here's their meeting.
It's
Like,
there.
we can make it simple. So Liz, you have a hand up?
So I was going to bring this up in new business, but Micheline, oh, ouch, sorry, I just got bit. Stop it. On lopezrocks.org on the calendar, I've put the full commission meeting and then a link directly to where people can go to the list of all the subcommittees, where it has a brief, it has the title, brief description, and the Zoom link to get to their meeting. So if I was going to invite the commissioners to go look at my language, if I need to change it, I certainly will, but that's out there. It'll just be an easy direct route to get to the Zoom links for the subcommittee and the full committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Okay, any other members of the public? Okay, if not, we're going to go to new business and very quickly, it was asked that we talk about the CRC budget. We have not decided exactly an idea to propose to you on the spending for the additional 7,000. I'm also trying to figure out how much of Catherine's time we're going to need after her contract expires. But the proposal we put forward to the county council for that increase in our spending was for additional staff support that would include research and drafting of our recommendations. So bringing some people on who will do some of that very important research that we need done, but then also some of the drafting that will need to be done too, that we can't all take on ourselves. The reason that has not been the biggest priority right now is because we have a little bit of time on that, but not a lot. We need to move on this. And so I've put a lot of time into thinking about it. And I would say that in the hopefully next week, maybe the following, that I would have an idea to present to you. But if anybody has any ideas, please call me and let's talk about it, or email. But I don't think we need to get into a big discussion right now unless somebody has a question or anything. But I don't, I want to say that anybody who has ideas on what our needs are, please call me. I want this to be an inclusive process. Anything else on new business? Okay, I'm so excited. Maybe I stole this. I don't know if I should say that. But when I was a county commissioner and we moved to being a county council, we left the courthouse and I was told that this would never be used again. But we used to hang this on the front when we were in the courtroom. And so Tom probably remembers this. It's the same sign. So this has been hanging up in the back of my office for 15 years and I finally So It is now executive session. So if you are not a member of the commission, we would ask that you hang up, except for Catherine, you can stay on, please. But everybody else, please, thank you so much for being here today and for participating. But we're going to move into an executive session.
I just
So,
wanted to say that my grandfather would respectfully say "scrammy-voo."
Would you like me to stop recording?
Yeah.
yeah,
Is this good?
yeah, you should, no, you definitely stop.